To recent train derailments, freshman Representative Greg Landsman has hit the ground running in Washington, D.C. Ahead, a candid conversation with Greater Cincinnati's new congressman. From WLWT, this is Let's Talk Cincy.
Robert Kennedy Jr., son of the late Senator Robert Kennedy, said, quote, "Democracy is messy and it's hard. It's never easy, and it's not going to be easy for the 118th Congress, which is facing big challenges this session." Welcome to Let's Talk Cincy. I'm Stephen Albritton. Now, one of the newest members to Congress is Greg Landsman. Congressman Landsman won election to represent Ohio's 1st District last November. The district includes Cincinnati and all of Warren County and is home to more than 780,000 people. Before heading to Washington, Congressman Landsman served on Cincinnati's City Council for 5 years and was a public school teacher prior to going into politics. And Congressman Landsman joins us here on Let's Talk Cincy. Welcome, sir. We got a lot of issues to talk about. First and foremost, you've been in Congress just a few months now. Kind of give us that quick look. What's it been like? Are you enjoying yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge honor, and I couldn't be more grateful for the opportunity to serve. At the moment, and I suspect this will be true for my tenure, my time in Congress, is, how do you get really good at this? Which isn't necessarily what people think that a newly elected member of Congress would be up to. But I'm trying to, with my team, figure out how to be really good at all aspects of being a member of Congress, which is case management and how you do constituent services really, really well. We want to be a place where people come and they get help. The legislative piece is super complicated, but how do you build relationships on both sides of the aisle and with the committee chairs and leadership so that you're getting your bills passed and helping other really smart bills get over the finish line, working with the administration so that the folks back home, our companies, our nonprofits, they're getting the attention that they need from the administration, and that we're back here more than we're in D.C. working really closely with folks to understand exactly what they need from their government, and then being that conduit, that facilitator to get them what they need. So all of those things are top of mind, and I'm trying to figure out exactly how to do this as well as possible, and that is an everyday thing. So even though there may be a lot of chaos or craziness, my head is, completely in the, okay, how do we get better at this so that we help as many people as possible?
Yeah, get at it as fast as possible with a 2-year term, of course, potentially more if you decide to run again and so on and so forth down the line. So we got a lot of issues to talk about, Congressman. It's been divided along party lines for a long time. We have, Republicans representing areas around here as well, and we wanted to invite 2nd District Congressman Brad Wedstrup here as well. He wasn't able to join us, but we're going to talk about working across the aisle, and he had some topics that he said that you guys might be able to work on together as well. Here, take a quick look.
Let's start young. There are things that we can talk about from the federal level that I think, Greg will be right with me on when we start talking about the health of our youth and what are they being taught in school on health.
All right, now in that interview, Congressman Wedstrup highlighted issues like childhood poverty and health care. In a 2021 Ohio Kids Count report, he said nearly 19%, or that report said 19% of children living in Ohio are actually below the poverty line. What other issues can Republicans and Democrats find some common ground on and work for the people?
So I am an optimist, but also have had a lot of experience where Republicans and Democrats have gotten a lot done together. We passed preschool together. We passed the largest transit and public public transit and infrastructure investment, a whole host of things at City Hall. And in D.C., you hear what gets covered is mostly that which divides us. But what you don't see is the majority of us working on all kinds of things, from public safety to, getting costs down. We just introduced a bill yesterday to cap the cost of insulin for children. I think children, and Congressman Winstrup talked about this. I think that's common ground. That's an area where Republicans and Democrats are and should be working together to make life infinitely better for children, which has been a big passion area of mine. So I believe almost any issue there will be common ground if you have the kind of leaders who are willing to go seek it out and to build those relationships. And so when I'm in D.C., at least once, oftentimes twice a week, I'm meeting with Republicans, really substantive meetings to figure out what those areas are so that we can, work on a bill or two together. And I have found that with Congressman Winstrup and other Republicans. And then I'm part of a group called the Problem Solvers.
Oh, yeah. We're going to touch on that later. Yeah. I want to hear all about the Problem Solvers and your insulin bill you just spoke about there. But we're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to talk about one bipartisan agreement. We're continuing this conversation that promises big returns for Greater Cincinnati. We're going to discuss the Brent Spence Companion Bridge. And Let's Talk Cincy returns.
What people have been talking about for decades, we are delivering on, and we are moving fast. We've been preparing and preparing and preparing so we can move at the most rapid speed possible and do it well, not only for the people of Ohio and Kentucky, but all of America that depends on this bridge.
The bipartisan infrastructure law paved the way for construction of a companion bridge to the Brent Spence Bridge. It provides $1.6 billion for the project. Ground is expected to be broken before the end of the year. The entire project is expected to take about 6 to 8 years to be finally completed. Now, welcome back to Let's Talk Cincy. We're here with Congressman Greg Landsman. Just looking at the bridge, what does it mean for our community? We talked a little bit about it in the break. It's going to be big.
Yeah, so take one step back, which is, why is infrastructure so important? And at the heart of that is how you build a really strong, robust economy. And the key to doing that, we know, is invest in infrastructure, invest in education. And these are two areas where we should be all working together, and I think you're seeing more and more of that. The bridge is one of several big infrastructure investments that we're going to get done because of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. But it means a lot of new jobs. I mean, it is a staggering number of jobs, which is a fantastic thing for our families and for the region and for our local economy. But also just having this companion bridge will make life a lot easier for folks, and it will lead to more folks wanting to invest here. And so it's a big deal, but it's one of many, right? It's probably the largest one in terms of the $1.6 billion investment, but you're going to see projects that aren't as big, but that are similar in terms of the significance and how we build this new economy popping up all over because of this bill.
Absolutely. Now, multiple administrations visited Cincinnati, standing underneath the Brent Spence, saying, we're going to build a new one, we're going to build a new one. Well, it's finally done. The funding is here, the bids are going out, and then the requests and all. But this is a major project connecting two different states that's going to cause some headaches and issues. Is there any concern of a timeline of getting this done? Delays? I mean, we talk 6 to 8 years, but this is a project that's not just something where you hire somebody and it's built in a few days.
No. It requires, all of the leaders on both sides of the river to continue to work together. And one of the first things I did after the election was to reach out to those leaders and say, we're all in, we want to be helpful, and we have dedicated a staff person to just ensure that we are in the room and tracking the progress and doing everything that we can to ensure that we don't miss a single deadline. And that, all of the various issues that do pop up, that we're problem solving those together so that it has the construction of this companion bridge has the least amount of impact on people every day.
Yeah, and they're expected to possibly get some green space back with that as well. And it's a project that many people thought that may never actually happen, but here we are. Okay, up next, we got to talk about railroad safety following several Norfolk Southern train derailments, including the toxic derailment out in East Palestine on the other side of the state. What can Congress do to keep us safe? We're going to talk about that topic coming up here in a moment.
The fact that we have this massive chemical spill and the people here still don't have any confidence that this stuff is going to get moved out of their community in a timely way is a complete disgrace and a complete failure of leadership. So we need to do better. I'm going to continue to apply pressure to the proper authorities to make sure that we do better. But it's a real travesty that we're now 2 months into this thing and the residents of East Palestine do not yet have their entire community cleaned up.
Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio is blaming the EPA for not doing more following February's 38-car train derailment in East Palestine. 11 of the derailed cars of the Norfolk Southern train carried hazardous materials. The derailment sent plumes of smoke and toxic chemicals into the air and also into the soil around it as well. So welcome back to Let's Talk Cincy. Congressman Greg Landsman still here with us. Let's turn our attention to that derailment. You know, quick thoughts on Senator Vance's comments on the assessment of how things are getting cleaned up.
Yeah, in the aftermath, you've seen a lot of us, Republicans and Democrats, say there are two really important things that we have to get right very quickly. One is the folks in East Palestine have to be made whole. They have to get their community back as quickly as possible. And so we pushed for FEMA and the EPA and others to get way more involved, have more folks on the ground to ensure that Norfolk Southern, they were doing everything that they needed to do, and that the agencies were doing everything they needed to do to make folks whole and give them their community back. And things have, they've made some progress, significant progress, but you can't let up until everything is back to where it was prior to the explosion. The second thing is it is long past time for 21st century rail safety reform. And we are seeing bipartisan support for that, both in the Senate and in the House. I am very much a part of that effort to ensure that this stops happening. And that means, safer train cars. Whether it's the brakes or the wheel bearings, the detectors on the tracks, those have to be working all the time. And the communication between these companies and our communities has to get better so that we know what's coming through our communities and we're prepared.
And you just touched on that. Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown and Senator Vance introduced that Bipartisan Railway Safety Act of 2023. Most of the details on it are on our screen. A number of safety initiatives like enhancing safety procedures. And, laws don't happen overnight, unfortunately. It's got to be introduced, committees voted on, both sides of Congress. How is this going to get put through? Is there that much support that we could see something get done quicker than a normal bill would be?
There has to be. I mean, we can't keep seeing these derailments. East Palestine is an example, an awful example of how bad it can be for a community. And so the answer is, we have got to get this done. And, there are multiple bills in the United States Senate. And so Senator Brown, Senator Vance, and others coming together to get one of them passed, hopefully the most comprehensive one. And then you will see either next week or the week after a bill that I believe will be very similar that we will introduce in the House. Congressman Johnson, who represents East Palestine, a Republican, Amelia Sykes, who's very close to that district up in Akron, a Democrat, and the rest of us in the Ohio delegation are all going to push for major changes that get to the reforms we need, but also will hopefully tackle either in the first instance or a second bill a compensation fund to ensure that people are made whole.
Yeah, that's very important. You know, as we wrap this topic up before we move on to the next one, you know, what surprised you about this, you know, this process? I think this is probably the first like major thing to happen within your state, although not your district. You know, what surprised you in this process of getting people help? And, you know, they were asking for help, but the federal government had, I felt like some fences in the way to get the help there.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, it was, for me, an opportunity to jump in and be as helpful as possible. And even though it didn't happen in our district, I certainly was in a position to help Congressman Johnson and others get the EPA and FEMA and others where they needed to be, and to ensure that we are holding this company fully accountable. Absolutely. So, you know, I was pleasantly surprised at how quickly the Ohio delegation came together. Republicans and Democrats, all 17 of us, there are 15 members of Congress, 2 United States senators, we all signed on to a letter and started making phone calls to ensure that the right people were in East Palestine, and now we're working together to get real reform passed.
And get the bills done. Another big topic happened just this past weekend, the failure of Silicon Valley and Signature Banks. We're going to get your insights on that in just a moment here, Congressman. But here's what 2 financial experts are saying to people who are nervous about their own accounts.
I don't think anyone should have concern about the safety of their money in a federally assured institution.
The U.S. government has now effectively guaranteed all deposits and said, keep your money where it is. No matter what happens to these banks, we are ensuring the money.
All right, Congressman, inflation is still high. It has been coming down over the past few months and year over year. But now with these banking failures, people are concerned about their own investments. Yes, the government, you know, keeps them, you know, whole up to $250,000. But what's your message to the people of your district in this area when it comes to, you know, keeping their money safe? What's the federal government doing to make sure that happens?
Well, the federal government, the White House, they're doing everything they're supposed to do, which is to ensure that the insurance program that was set up decades ago to protect these assets and your money, my money, they have kicked in. And so they got involved immediately over the weekend, and the folks that had money in this bank were able to make payroll, which is a big deal, and then to say, hey, look, all of these you know, accounts are insured, so you're fine, and I think that helps with consumer confidence. There won't be a run on the banks, but we do have to look back very quickly, and that's happening now, and I've been part of those conversations, and say, okay, what happened here? And how do we make sure it doesn't happen again and it doesn't spread to other banks? And it will require some changes. There will be folks associated with this bank that are going to be held accountable, need to be held accountable. You know, anyone that lost any money, they need to be made whole.
Absolutely. So we'll see what happens on that front. And just ahead, we're going to talk with Congressman Landsman. Our conversation continues about his bill that caps the cost of insulin for children. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's tackle a couple of other important topics in our remaining time with Congressman Greg Landsman. First, recently joined the bipartisan House Gun Prevention Task Force, a very important topic. How is this one different than the others? We've seen so many tragedies over the years, but how is this one different and hopefully going to create some change?
Well, I think you're seeing more and more folks on both sides of the aisle finding those areas of common ground, it's not just these awful, tragic mass shootings. It's the everyday gun violence, you know, us needing to rein this in. It's too much. We're losing way too many people, loved ones, children, and so you know, I think what is making this different is the fact that you have more and more folks on both sides willing to find the common ground and continue to pass things, even if it's not the big, end all, be all fix. You're making progress, and I think that mindset is helping.
Absolutely. And, there's people out there, lawful gun owners who might think that their Second Amendment rights are being intruded on.
No.
What can you say to them when things like this happen and you guys come together to pass legislation?
Yeah, I think it's all around gun safety and making sure that guns aren't getting in the hands of folks that are going to do bad things. I have a lot of family members and friends that are gun owners, and they feel very similar, which is they don't want these guns in the wrong hands either. And as long as it's common sense and it works, that it's not just something that you pass so that you can say you passed something, but it's actually going to keep these guns out of our communities and away from people who want to do bad things with them. They want to see that too.
Absolutely. And switching gears, you have your first introduced bill capping the cost of insulin. It's called Making Insulin Affordable for All Children Act. What does it call for? What does it do? I know you're passionate about this topic.
Yeah, it caps the cost of insulin at $35 a month for all children, young people up to the age of 26. And that is based on the fact that insulin should be affordable for everybody, but we believe we can get this passed in this Congress. So we just did it for seniors, so folks on Medicare don't have to pay more than $35 a month, and I believe that there's enough common ground to do the same for children. And I have found in my experience that Republicans and Democrats come together on a whole host of issues, helping kids. That's one of them.
Helping kids. I know you invited a young man out to the State of the Union. Very cool moment for him, but his family went through some hardships just to afford the insulin.
Yeah, so Isaiah Gentry, he came to the State of the Union as my guest so that we could talk about making insulin affordable for all children, and because he's a cool kid and it was fun to have him at the
It's
State
good to have those
Union.
around, right? Yeah.
But his mother is a friend of ours, and she had this great career, and she was making $80,000, $90,000 a year, but she couldn't afford the insulin, so she had to take a $30,000, $40,000 a year job so that she could be eligible for Medicaid, so that she could pay for the insulin for her child. That doesn't make sense in this country, and we can fix it. It doesn't hurt anybody. It doesn't cost taxpayers any more money. It saves them money, actually. And so the question is, why hasn't this happened? It will eat into a little bit of the profits of 4 or 5 manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies.
But they'll be okay.
They'll be okay. Yeah.
Congressman Landsman, thanks for spending some time with us here on Lex Talk Cincy. We'll see you next week for another edition.
Thanks for having me.